Alright guys, I had originally intended this to be part of the mod-along series, but I think it would be at least as good or better served as a standalone video. But I neglected to cover the actual modifying of the battery door that I built for the Centaur here, which usually the Centurion is just a solid stock on the back, but I opened it up to make it a battery compartment, as you can see. I neglected to cover any of that because I just kind of did it and forgot to turn on the camera. So I'm going to kind of cover that for this other project right here, which is a similar situation but a different project. So this is just a regular, I mean obviously it's not a stock Centurion, but this part is stock. So it's just, haven't done anything else really back here. What we're going to do, we're going to use a couple tools. What we're going to do is basically scribe this back panel. And I say scribe because, well, that's, I guess, a terminology used, at least in the model car hobby, probably various kinds of models anyway. But I have a scribing tool, which is just this little kind of a pen-shaped guy with a very, very, very pointy, hardened tip on it. You can also use a regular number 11 hobby knife, just a regular hobby blade. But what we're going to do basically is just, as boring as it sounds, this will probably be a short video because there's not a whole lot going on because I'm going to speed up the heck out of this thing. But what we're going to do is basically you'd have the line where you have the black panel and there is a little bit of a groove all the way around. We're basically going to draw over and over and over on that groove. You can either use, this guy's nice because he doesn't wander off because he kind of fits into that channel. But I'm going to end up using the hobby knife. You can't just use just the hobby knife. This is going to take a long time if you're doing it firsthand, but it's easier in the straights, but you do have to take extra care in the corners so you don't wander off. When you start, you don't want to be pushing down very hard. You just want to get in there and just, whoops, yeah, screwed that up quick. Okay, that isn't as groovy as I thought. Okay, so we're going to favor the inside here. Wow, not too good at this. Okay. And you could use like a little coping saw, or you could probably actually get away with using like a jeweler's saw or something very fine. But the problem is you're going to be removing so much material you'll end up with a gap. The idea with scribing is that you're removing literally a blade's width of material to where basically you end up with just a standard panel gap, which is really what you want. But you don't want to carve into the plastic using the sharp side. You want to use the back of the blade favoring the tip, and it'll usually just peel off just a little ribbon once you actually start getting into it. And just take it slow and steady. I try to, just because I'm relatively impatient, start on the straights and then work up to the curves, because the curves are trickier because you have to follow the same curvature over and over again, and it does get horribly boring, but the results are worth it. And it does get easier as you go along because it is tricky kind of getting started because you don't have anything, and you have basically a line you're working with. Once you start getting a little trough, it does go a little quicker and easier, but you still want to be careful. Okay, and we've officially broken through on this bottom corner. So now we're just gonna keep working it. And okay, we're getting really close to breaking through here because we're running into some of the internal structure. It's not just gonna be a clean shot because there are ribs that come through here. So now we're hitting hard spots. You can tell where the plastic's getting thin, but it goes thud, 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 thud as you go. So we're getting pretty darn close to where I think we could open up the shell once we get through around this side and everything. We can open up the shell and get to it from the back side and clear out some of those a little bit. Okay, we're through in a couple spots. We're going to go ahead and open it up. You can kind of see, I don't know if you're going to show up on camera, but you can kind of see a hairline coming right through here and up through here and around here where it's either poked through all the way, or at the very least it's whited a little bit where the plastic is stressed. So what we can do is kind of trace along some of those lines from the inside, and also might go ahead and take some of these guys and bite some of that through some of the thicker spots. If you want to, you can go ahead and just keep trimming with the blade. Some of these might not let us do that. Okay, we're through right here. That's gonna hurt. Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Use my razor saw just to cut through these large support pieces in there. Reason being, I cheapened out when I bought new blades. I should have bought X-Acto brand, but I bought Revell brand because I got a whole bunch of them in this little dispenser thing, thinking I was getting a good deal. But these are a lot more brittle and don't hold an edge quite as well as the X-Acto brand. So, lesson learned, do not shorten or cheapen out when you're buying your tools and things. So, instead of being able to cut through that without breaking, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Okay, now we're real close. The bottom part here is pretty loose because there's kind of this top section there. Oh, there we go. A little bit of wiggling. And there we go. Last little bit of that support piece in here, this little bulkhead in there. Now you have half of your door. And there is going to be a little bit of cleanup, but probably nothing you can't do with a file or some sandpaper or whatever. You will have to clean up what's left of these support pieces and stuff like that. Depending on what size of battery or what else you're going to do back in here, you might want to clean up some more. I'll probably cut this guy off, clean off the side of this guy, probably take this piece off here, round these off a little bit, do the same thing over here and all that. Probably clean up some of these as well. I know more than necessary, I guess, if you don't want to. So I think for starters, I'm just gonna rough out. This will just make it a little easier to handle in the meantime. So we've got that going for us right now. So we'll go ahead and knock out this other side. Then we'll knock out this one, and then we'll look at building a complete door. Bingo. Now we have more or less an accessory compartment of whatever you want, whether it's for just the battery or for if you want to have access to a computer board of some kind for magic stuff or whatever it's going to be. You have, of course, there's this large orifice here, and then you have a little bit smaller compartment there as well. But that doesn't matter if you can't cover it up. So you take your two halves, and it already has little tabs that kind of help lock them together before. So you just kind of line up the body as best you can. I noticed on the other one especially as well, the lines, the ribs that come across here aren't perfect, and so I just lined them up as best as I could, and then came through with a file and kind of trued it up a little bit to help hide the seam, and also just to make the lines blend together a little better. So we'll scuff things up a little bit. I think what I'm going to do is lock it in place, then DevCon it from the back, so we can have that whole seam filled and everything, instead of trying to gush it out the middle here, because that'll be kind of a nightmare. I suppose what we could do is put just a thin film on the actual seam, stick it together. Anything that gushes out will stick to the paint, and we can clean it up fairly easily, especially after we go through and clean up everything anyway, but then favor the back side for the main glue surface. So alright, I think we're dry enough to play with this a little bit. So we're just gonna take it and do a little dry fitting, see how it feels. It is a bit snug because we do have all this weird junk in the opening, so I think we'll go through and just with a little file work and just kind of clean up some of these edges, make sure that we got a nice solid line across the top and bottom. See this one here cut a little bit taller, but also keeping in mind the mold is a little weird, to where this doesn't necessarily mean that the piece itself was perfect to begin with. So we'll just go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Don't want to remove too much material, just enough to kind of clean it up, and then we'll fit everything to the opening once we get it cleaned up a little bit. Okay, that's actually looking very, very nice. It's very snug. We might need to adjust it a little bit. We can see the comes off okay, drops right into place, nice and snug all the way around. So I suppose at this point, you can kind of decide whether you want to do a magnet affair, which I had considered doing on the Centaur, but I decided to go with a more factory appearing look using the screw. And how I did that was I just took a strife jam door and cut the, do I have one of those? No. Okay, I just took the little screw port deal off of a strife battery door, cut it off and glued it to the top here. There we go. As you can see here, I just took and cut off the screw part and just glued it to the top. And then just carved out the matching material on the back of the shell. There we go. And then took the little nut from the strife and just glued it up inside and added some reinforcement around it. So it'll just drop in. And for the tab here, on the bottom, because if you had the screw on the top, it would be secure on the top, but the bottom will be flapping. And you don't want a flappy bottom. So I took some shell scraps. This was off of a Stampede, I believe, but it's just a flat section that had a 90-degree bend on it, which was just a nice support that I was able to lay it up against this this reinforcement piece here. And I just let it stick out just a little bit past, because there is a bit of room in there. There's not a whole lot going on down in the bottom, to where it'll just tab in like so. I don't think I had to shim anything anyway to get the depth right, because it does fit in a little bit, because you did remove some material from the side, but I don't think that throws off the lines, because I think it is inset somewhat. I suppose if that bothered you, you could add a little bit of material to this surface here on either side, or on here to make it stand out just a little bit. But that's all personal preference and stuff like that. So that's basically the majority of what you need to know to do your battery door, or I guess to convert a Centurion stock to a battery compartment. As I noted in the mod-along episode that covered this, I did add a floor in the bottom here just to isolate, because I did have the 9-volt for the ammo counter down here and the regular LiPo up top. So depending on what your setup is, what you're building, or whatever, you can either leave this wide open, or you could block everything off, or, you know, depending on what you're putting in there. So there you go. So if you have any other cool ideas of things you can do with, you know, with this battery door or whatever, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.